and I'm making a video about the grooming methods of the animation industry. This person right here is to blame, so, you know. These people spend every day harassing me on this board of 4chan, which is the only place for me to actually interact about artwork. I don't want to discuss paintings with some mountain men. I want to discuss comics and cartoons and some other related things like certain musicians. And these trolls tend to use grooming methods because they're not quite capable of, acknowledging that I'm 32 years old, and when I was 15 years old, I sought to inspire other artists. They can't acknowledge the jump from me being about 22 years old to being 32. It's too much for their minds, which makes them very pathetic, because if you can't even acknowledge how old somebody is, you're just completely failing on your side of the quote-unquote discussion. So I'm going to highlight first, here's a grooming method. I was consciously aware of this method during the whole interaction, so first, he said he's never met the people who, I message with emails and stuff, which could mean that he's in the animation industry, and I mean that he's in animation school and hasn't met anybody in Los Angeles. So they never actually deny that they have involvement with industry animation in some way. And if they did, it wouldn't make any sense, because what is their motivation for harassing me and getting so riled up over something that has nothing to do with them? They expect to be talking to kids who can't figure those things out. So, first, he brought up never meeting people, as can be expected means in real life. Then I said, I've never done that either. I've never had a discussion about animation in real life. And then he says, oh, you never interacted. No. Interacting on the internet counts as interacting. That's the sort of move that could slip past, a 14-year-old on some animation Discord. But to me, it's just pathetic. It's like looking at a cockroach. So, another grooming method is pretending like someone has read or looked at your stuff. I really understand this, because some teenager on the internet, he or she's putting up some webcomics, putting up some paintings, putting up some writing. If somebody starts talking crap about it, that person is going to think, well, they actually looked at it. They actually experienced it. Because otherwise it would be just really pathetic and cowardly to not even look at the artwork they are insulting. So, I could pick apart their whole psychology, and so it just wears them down, and this video will wear them down much more. So, the definition of grooming is trying to guide people according to your petty desires instead of guiding people as you should be guiding them. So, a non-groomer in animation teaches people how to make good animation and understand the medium and the history and so forth. A groomer in animation trains people to serve the industry without even admitting that they are doing so. If it was actually a good thing, they would be able to say it. Like, they'll throw out a few words like realistic, but they can't actually come out and say, we're teaching you things that only make sense in the animation industry of Los Angeles, because they know it's not right. I mean, look at the animation industry. It's putting out failure after failure, and their work is belittled. Even their supposed classics like BoJack Horseman gets tons of criticism. People don't respect them. It's serious abuse to train a young person in the animation community to serve them. And so not a lot of young people go into the animation industry. I'm making a steak which may be a bit spoiled. Could have eaten it last night, but when I don't send messages to the animation industry and stuff, it spoils my desire to, just live. I need to take action against the industry, both for justice and also because I am naturally good at conflict. And so I was condemned on the basis of my identity as a teenager, which is identity-based grooming. Saying that someone's identity is not acceptable, which comes out of how many people in the industry are pro-choice, are pro-abortion. They don't have any concern for all the babies who are aborted, and so they don't have any concern for treating people with certain personalities like trash, saying, why do you even enjoy, cartoons, even though their personalities could be directly related to the reason why they enjoy cartoons. In my view, things like cartoons, movies, and so forth, many things that have been built in America, and, of course, lots of other things, they were all intentionally incorporated into God's original design. God's original design included cartoons, and so certain people have inherent inbuilt affinities for cartoons. Cartoons are a medium of exaggeration, visual exaggeration, which is useful for doing things like drawing spiritual life. So they don't want this spiritual reality to be exposed, and so they say, I'm a schizophrenic. And the grooming there is they don't actually say what this means. What is it? What about me is schizophrenic? A lot of Christians are called, schizos, and so simply being a Christian could qualify. And simply being a conservative, following along with the narratives of conservative, leaders could qualify. And of course, I tend to go along with anything the industry and similar communities doesn't approve of. So, yeah. And they pretend like they read my articles. But if they actually did, I would be able to tell. Because, they wouldn't be quipping the same way anymore once this is published. I'm not going to show these comments because they're really garbage. Oh, I'm just including this thread in my video about grooming methods of the animation industry. Not grilling, grooming. So, ate my steak, which was pretty good after trimming off the gray parts. So, going to list grooming methods here. Journalistic. That's interesting. So, calling things bad with no actual standard of quality. This actually plays off of comments I left as a teenager because I would call things bad, but not explain what I meant because it was a mystery. You were supposed to figure it out. Certain individuals, like the creator of Unsounded and the creator of Steven Universe, they did figure things out. There were also a lot of, hacks who were very frustrated, like Alex Hirsch, who just couldn't handle these comments. Alex Hirsch especially, because he made a series about the paranormal, but he actually hates the paranormal. So my mysterious comments were very offensive to him. And so when the industry says that artwork is bad, it just means it doesn't serve the interests of the industry. They don't care about things being objectively bad. They prefer things to be objectively bad because that serves their interests. Discouraging spiritual themes and interests. So, people in the industry are allergic to any sort of spirituality. It makes them freak out on sight. Like, I mentioned trying to create the aesthetics of my near-death experiences for my webcomic, and there was some animation student, probably, was all like, "Oh, you've been disqualified for working in the industry," like he thought I was 20 years old or something. So they won't come out and say that no Christians are allowed and no other types of people, because then they'll get in trouble for openly discriminating, including legal trouble. So they just pretend it has something to do with something else, like being schizophrenic or sharing an offensive meme or whatever. Playing on child psychology. So people in the industry, they are man-children, which means they have a rotted childishness. They can't engage in the adult world. Proper adults can't take them seriously. And so they always intend their statements to be for actual children or infantilizing adults as if they are children, encouraging a lack of maturity. Involving either, someone being like 15 years old or arising sentiments associated with the inner child. So, I am currently making a video about grooming methods of the animation industry. Period. These things take time. Of AI to be able to generate my setting, as it can actually extrapolate it from things like Steven Universe as being a part of a body of works inspired by my setting. Period. Just like I asked AI a question and it accurately generated Dark Tower as being inspirational for my work, next Neil Gaiman, Tolkien. So people in the industry, they just go around policing interests, making it clear that, horror stuff is not acceptable. Everything's got to be that squeaky clean Cal Arts mentality. So you can see Ren and Stimpy fans going through some intense difficulty, young ones, to participate in the animation community. Like they'll rant and rave about hating John Kay, at the same time that they talk about how much they love Ren and Stimpy, which is what he created. And so they're intentionally creating a serious mental illness for them by simultaneously hating and loving with a love. So See a lot of things like that. And this is what the trolls did in the AI thread, claiming ownership of personality traits because they never got to know me. They never had a private conversation. And so, even though I'm so much about Terminator, there was a villain of a webcomic based on me, which actually incorporates a Terminator motif. So, they still try to pretend like it's a big shock that I'm really into AI. It also shows they don't read my articles and stuff too. So, my webcomics, so. They groom, like on Discord servers, and they try to control how people develop, because if people develop naturally, that's bad news for the animation community. So, incitement to hostility. That's something that one of the trolls just did, trying to encourage me to be more aggressive, even though, number one, this is just how I am. Number two, if I was more aggressive, then that would make me look a lot worse. So, they use these underhanded tactics, but it makes them like cockroaches because I could easily identify them. This goes all the way back to being a teenager. Like, people would say to me, "Oh, don't you hate that?" And they'd say, "Oh, I hate that too," focusing on hatred. But I was not focused on hatred, I was actually focused on horror. So I'd call things horrible and terrible because it is associated with horror. Like, there's a lot of horror associated with Animaniacs. And so I communicated that once by referring to a 1,000 horrors. So, denying recent history, like, these people won't own up to how much they got from John K's blog, even though it's such a big thing, thousands of people. They may have talked crap about John as about the things he supposedly hated and all that, but they still learned from him. They got a lot from him. And they incorporated that into their work, like with characters inspired by life, even though the drawings weren't good. And this often led to bad things, like the Simon and Grace season of Infinity Train, because they took that John K. philosophy, but they hated it at the same time, and so they twisted it around into being, a bad thing for the people being depicted as symbolic characters who may be associated with Ren and Stimpy in the first place. So, these people even deny that I'm making a YouTube video because they are so childish that they cannot accept reality whatsoever. So, since people in the industry don't like expressive cartooning, they don't like expressive people either, they cannot be expressive themselves because they are dead spiritually. They don't like to see people having strong expressions, being boisterous, being very personal, having strong reactions. All of these things are connected to cartooning as part of a definite design. They're resisting, artistic nature, and so they need to resist everything associated with the artistry, even if it is fairly psychotic. So, gaslighting experiences and reactions. So, if if people give their review of watching a cartoon, which is pretty much always disappointing for everybody. So they try to deny the experience. They're used to interacting with children, like teenagers, who have malleable psychology, and so they try to reshape their own understanding of their experiences and tastes. But what they do when they do that is create some seriously mentally ill individuals who will do things like freak out and snap if you criticize, I don't know, some cartoon that's current. All they care about is trying to get their fantasy career going in the industry, and as they do so, they completely rot out the whole animation community associated with the industry. Demanding income, they'll demand you to see their movies, watch their shows, which will give them ad revenue, whatever. And that's one of the stupid motivations for attacking me, because they demand me to watch their movies and stuff. And so now they won't look at my own work. But number one, my work is free. Number two, I couldn't even afford to watch their movies. And number three, if I did watch their stuff, it would be destructive to my creativity, which is, of course, the point. It not only makes them money, it attacks people's ability to do better. Because garbage in, garbage out. Refusal to acknowledge interconnection. Like they absolutely refuse to acknowledge that commenters in various animation forums have been involved with the creative process, even though they'll, go on there purely for the sake of their careers, belittling people who actually want to be in the community for the community, not just boosting their careers. Then they turn around and deny that people had any sort of involvement in the whole process. Even though they'll openly go and say, oh, Peridot is asexual. And why do they do that? Because of people on social media. But if it's people on 4chan, they'll just deny any sort of interaction there. They won't do that for Twitter or whatever, even when, the whole Peridot asexual thing single-handedly ruined the symbol of fusion as representing relationships. So, yeah. Walking into the store. Thinking. So, this is the sort of thing I was last dealing with from the trolls, ranting about AI, trying to say that I was using magical thinking while I was being perfectly rational and just merely recounting facts. But these facts have a racial undertone, so in the old days, of America, black people were known for being superstitious and childish. They were called boy and stuff like that. This was immortalized by the slogan of Margaret Sanger. And so many people in the animation industry are openly pro-choice, so their slogan of ignorance and superstition. It's a racist term because it's epithets for mystery and story, so yeah. And basically this troll cannot believe that I can rationally explain everything to which I refer. And he does this because he doesn't actually look at my content, he doesn't read my articles, watch my videos or anything, doesn't read my webcomic. He's just talking crap out of his little fantasy world It's a little mental playground castle. So yeah, political racialism is the sort of thing you can see from works such as The Ghost and Molly Mickey, as talk about being Thai, or another show talks about being black, or another show talks about being Colombian, and it's avoiding the actual essences of race and ethnicity. There's a variety of essences which relate to profound cosmic realities, but they don't like that. When I started explaining all this cosmic race stuff, all of a sudden my trolls didn't want to address my articles anyway. They didn't want to address anything I was actually working on. They just act like big loudmouth children. So this racialism, this politics, it's basically a LARP, live action role playing, and you're LARPing as if your race is just a political demographic. There's no meaning to it. You've just got to compete against the other races for how much you have. There's no essence. It doesn't contribute anything unique to God's creation. So, meritocracy for thee and friendly, happy Nepaland for me. So, of course, when these people in the industry talk to someone like me, they try to make it sound as if everything is about merit, even though, it's obviously not. If you are a skilled animator, you will get absolutely, nuked by the animation industry, as the affair with the Scooby-Doo FNAF animator showed. If you're an artist with merit, you're a target, you're not a participant. There's only just a few of the old guard, like the Molly Mickey show. It's done by some people around when, John Kay's blog was big, and they don't want to attack their elders who have a lot of clout in the industry, are very established in the social circles. So if you're new and you've got merit, you're an enemy. And friendly, happy Nepaland, they act like everything's about being friends. Like, even Vivian, or Has-Been Hotel, Hell of a Boss, check like, that gray, Delousy, that's how it's pronounced, Delousy, is just expressing, her personal reaction, her little voice actor friendships. But really, they are gatekeeping in a feminine way, establishing what is acceptable in the social currents and what is not. And of course, these careerist women habitually deny that they have any sort of, feminine power, but that's not going to turn out well for them real quick for various reasons. Open terms refers to terms that don't really mean anything, that could have a multiple possibilities of what they actually mean. It's the sort of thing I have to deal with a lot, because they are so cowardly, and they also know that every single day I can make big change to the whole, animation world. So they want to keep their options open in the terms they use. Squirtle. Denial of context. Of course, people in the industry fail to acknowledge any sort of context besides their selfish desires, including the collective ones, because when you consider children, they don't really know what's going on in the world, don't know what's going on outside their household, school, whatever. And people in the industry are much like that, but they are demented, overgrown children, so it's a little different. They constantly act as if they're interacting with me for the first time. It just so happens that they keep saying the same things, and they dedicate a massive amount of man hours to, directly harassing me and messing with my life, and also as part of, their cultural currents, their psychological makeup, their subconscious activity, and so forth. Another common grooming method referring to seeking attention. This is one of those open terms because what does seeking attention actually refer to? It can refer to just wanting social interaction. It also can refer to wanting medical care, as in medical attention. When I came to the animation community, I was looking for a community. I was not looking for a hobby or a career. I did not even have the things necessary for a hobby. I didn't have those DVDs or anything else. And for me, animation was important to living. It's important in a wide variety of ways, such as being understood. And so, seeking attention can simply refer to being understood instead of being treated as someone I am not. And lack of concern for needs. People in the industry wanted animation to be all about their careers, specifically their fantasies of having a career. They didn't want to care about anybody besides themselves. And so, when I was crushed by my encounters with the animation community and some other communities as a teenager, it was hard for me to even care about my own self-interest, because expecting anything at all was too much for them. They knew it was warranted because there is spiritual significance to cartoons. There is personal significance. A lot of people, built their identities from watching classic cartoons. It was personal in nature, but they had their selfish man-child fantasies, and so they would spaz out at the responsibility I was encouraging them to have. And in the process, they destroyed my life, but now I have the power to destroy theirs by the thousands. Acting innocent. Over the years, there have been many periods where these people would act as if suddenly they could pretend like my abuse never happened, which is much like what little kids do when they hit another kid or say rude things, and then they put on their little innocent act to mommy and daddy. Of course, in the industry, we have some spoiled children who have never had to seriously face accountability and such things. Sexualization of interaction. People like in the industry want everything to be sexual because if you embrace casual sex, you don't need to care about others. You can treat them like sex toys. Meanwhile, if you value things like friendship, that's much more difficult. You actually have to care about people as people. And so when I was a teenager, they made thousands of sexual references because of my advocacy for John Kay's philosophy, which has a lot to do with friendship. So they were attacking my priority on friendship by grooming me with all those sex ideas. And of course, this guilt ate away at them, so they eventually loved to talk about John supposedly being a groomer, but I don't think John sent thousands of messages, of obscene messages. So, cartoons aren't serious. That's the sort of attitude they have. Oh, it's just a cartoon, bro. No, cartoons have always been serious. Used to be that millions of kids in a generation grew up watching a lot of cartoons. When I was a kid, I sat around at home a lot, watching cartoons as they got worse and worse. And it brought an emptiness into my soul. Life seemed empty because of how over the 90s all the soul of cartoons was gutted in comparison to works like Dexter's Lab and Ren and Stimpy. And so I went onto the internet. I said cartoons needed to be good for the kids. And people really freaked out because, I was only 15 years old complaining about how I had been abused by those awful cartoons. And cartoons are serious in a lot of other ways, like how politics uses cartoons. They make their little cartoons both literal drawings and also cartoonish characterizations of their opponents and such. And they prefer to use cartoons for political manipulation because if political cartoons are the only cartoons you ever see, like all those stupid leftist images, then that makes the leftist imagery much more special than it would be otherwise. Disqualification process. They have an elaborate process to disqualify people from participating in the industry, which they refuse to acknowledge. And it can be boiled down to being just like them. Don't complain about the bean mouth. Don't complain about the lack of creativity. Don't advocate for the principles of John Kay's blog. Those things we love to spite. Don't care about friendship. Don't care about horror. Enjoy your Gravity Falls. Don't like that Billy and Mandy stuff. Don't expect them to be decent people. Don't have religious beliefs unless you worship at the altar of, corporations or whatever, and so on and so forth. Not owning up to feminine power. The animation industry isn't entirely women, but it's a very, very low masculinity place. You've got these overgrown boys, and you've got some females. So there's basically no masculinity at all. And social rules are very important. And they always pretend like they're just little friends. No, you're not friends. Your idea of a friend is a connection. A connection is a tool that can be severed at any time if it is no longer useful. A real friendship doesn't just end. Excusing all psychological abuse. They pretend like they just say some mean words to their enemies, but really, the psychic environment of the individual is very important to a creative. Every single psychological abuse tactic they use is a direct sabotage of the creativity of people who are actually creative. People who can actually draw cartoons and people who actually care about cartoons. If they say they're nasty stuff, they could say that all day and still draw in the bean mouth style. But if someone is making sensitive and nuanced and complex artwork, then their nastiness is attacking the psychological activity of the individual's mind, which is fueling all those delicate details. Pushing the personal fantasy. Being man-children, all they care about is their little fantasy of getting into the animation industry, which they see as a magical place, even though nobody likes the cartoons. This doesn't really make much of an impact on them mentally because they are still lost in their childhood fantasy. That fantasy stays the same no matter how obvious it is that nobody likes the garbage Los Angeles is putting out. And they'll go around saying like, oh, don't you wish you were in the industry like me? Oh, you can't be in the industry. Which is supposed to make it sound desirable, but people do not desire it. I want the industry community completely out of the way. I don't want them to have any sort of involvement in not only my life, but anybody's life if they actually care about cartoons. It's okay if the big shot does it. Alex Hirsch would promise young fans of his show a career, to have sex with them, and then of course not actually give them the career, and they would say this is okay. Even though Gee whiz. That sounds like the sort of thing that would get a dude crucified in the more lucid periods of the Tumblr days. But of course, Alex Hirsch is special because he formed the social parameters. He formed the nostalgic memories. He formed their stupid social media identities with his bad cartoon. And so he can get away with whatever he wants. Well, not so much anymore. It's been dying off. You know. I'm gonna look up every single Gravity Falls fan and alert them to how their favorite cartoon groomed them to destroy AI. Why? Because it can make life spookier. Yes. Guy-based persecution. People in the industry don't only have an issue with me, they also have an issue with anybody who is like me. Now, I've seen this. Of course, I'm not going to highlight the individuals I have seen. But all the things I'm associated with, if somebody's a big fan of them, they're going to have a lot of issues in the animation community and the other internet communities it touches. So, if you're looking at the traits of the underrealm, you're looking at how every single animation industry thing is going to be undermined and annihilated. So, they won't want anybody messing around with that. It's so dangerous for them. Don't watch Looney Tunes. This refers to, discouraging people from watching the classics. And there's a lot of significance to Looney Tunes because Bugs Bunny, he actually represents the trickster. Bugs Bunny became a big star because he represents the trickster. He symbolizes the inherent essence behind cartoons. And that's why people made such great Bugs Bunny cartoons, because they were directly drawing under the spirit of the cartoon. If you want to start off with the cartoon medium, you start off at the source. Just like God, he started off with a dude named Dude. He started off with a man named Adam, which means man. Started out with a basic concept. Made in his image. And later on, there were a lot of deviations from that, like there were giants and there were all the races and stuff. And that's the way it works. You start off with the image of God, the image of the trickster, and you expand out of that image. So they just want their little circle, their little disc of nostalgia, of fantasy, which they build up in part like watching the Looney Tunes and stuff, fantasizing about being Chuck Jones, fantasizing about being Walt Disney, and then they kick out the ladder from under them, lost in their own non-causative fantasy world, which gradually turns to pure shit. Just clockwork machinery, getting worse and worse and worse. And they can't really do anything anymore. I can literally tell them, I'm going to message the industry because of what you just did. And they keep doing it. They can't stop. They don't have the option to stop unless I attack the industry culture with things like my message bombardment. Then that disintegrates the industry culture in their mind so they can make more meaningful decisions, but not by much. And they demand to financially support the industry. If they can't make products people actually want to watch, They shouldn't go around demanding financial support. They should make quality products which people desire. They shouldn't be going onto Twitter telling people to watch the latest movie, and that if they watch the Bob Burgers movie, there's going to be some beautiful so-called 2D animation after that. The people responsible for the Bob Burgers movie, they can't do Sleeping Beauty. They cannot. They don't have the power for that. And these people were perfectly fine with ruining all of my opportunities. To them, it's a big, stupid game for a little kid. And led to a great deal of frustration in previous years because, with hardly any effort, I could disrupt their financial income. Can't find out how much yet, but one of the things I'm looking forward to the most is simply, but from the heavenly assessment, how much money I actually cost them in certain times, with certain methods, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. To me, I look forward to heaven for things like scoreboards. And eventually I developed my understanding of the trickster. And I started to see that he has his own scoreboards. So, all of these things about cartoons, they are seriously spiritually significant. They're all interconnected into people's lives in a variety of aspects, in a variety of dimensions. But to people in the industry, they just want their little social chamber. And all they see on the outside is people to give them the fuel for their fantasy lives. After everything they've done, pretty soon I'm going to do my best to destroy their ability to make any income, just as they did the same to me. For all the time that they were becoming so frustrated about how little people wanted to pay for their very expensive Disneyland, working at literally Disney as well as other studios like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, etc. I didn't tell them all these things about the trickster, all these things about how so many of their projects are interconnected into my teenage efforts and cannot function properly without my own creations. The Owl House was not good. And it was not good because it could not benefit from my creative setting much at all. And all these things are going to sustain some serious damage very soon. And so people didn't want to address my concerns. People could hardly even acknowledge that children should be cared for. And it's all going to come back at them. Every single thing, no matter how small. Some may think it is. It's not. Because everything that is ever done, it goes down in the story of life. So, what story are people telling? The story told for a lot of people in animation is a teenager doing their best to benefit their field and also many other things, and seeing that as an opportunity for a decade over a decade, I guess, to groom, 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 as it becomes more and more impossible to enjoy the grooming they tried to do. And that's it for now.